Hello, hello. So this is Rio here once again to share some of the information from my catalog of Black past blogs, and I'm just trying to make them more accessible, put them here in a podcast format, narrate them, read them out loud, and add some commentary about different stories that were part of my personal spiritual journey, my spiritual awakening, trainings in India, other places, going on sabbatical and going on Vipassana and such things. And this time, I want to share a conversation I had with Ellen Petry Leanse on how the best leaders master both sides, spirituality and science. So this is about teachings from, the departure point is an article I read from her about Steve Jobs' spiritual library and how the influence of the magical and Eastern philosophies had on him as an entrepreneur, as a designer. Just as a quick note, this was part of a series of serendipities that took me to Yogananda. First this article, then feeling guided through ayahuasca to go and get into pranayama. So going to the ashram in India, someone handed me a book that was about Yogananda. At the end of the course, by accident, I opened the computer in the ashram and there was a film. It was a film about Awaken, the only video file, was Awake, the story of Yogananda. So the kind of like the departure point is it's Yogananda. Yogananda is one of the yogic masters that brought yoga from India to the West. And so let's just get started. That was kind of like a little bit the sort of the background on the context. In conversation with Ellen Petry Leanse. Ellen teaches design at Stanford. She's a business consultant, author, and ex-head of Global Marcomms at Google Enterprise. And she worked at Apple in the early days. In the last couple of years, I've been meeting more and more entrepreneurs that are transforming their lives and businesses by opening up to spirituality and holistic practices. By pure serendipity, I connected with Ellen, and we were having a conversation rooted on her article, The Path of Thinking Different, where she writes, there's something about Steve's interest in the magical, the things on the other side of conventional reality that seem worth a closer look. These mystical touch points weren't a romantic diversion from an acid-dropping dreamer in an early chapter of his idealistic life. There were raindrops, markers of a path for an ambitious, irreverent, hungry, kind of different thinker who valued his internal voice, one that told him that there's something more going on here, more than that required of external approval. Ellen and I connected thanks to a friend, Akash Shukla, and my first question to her was like, hey, I've noticed these patterns of more and more entrepreneurs pursuing spirituality. How do you see the balancing of these two aspects, the rational and the spiritual? She says, I'm very interested in the balance and integration of these two sides rather than the usual approach of enforcing the line that divides the two of them, because this line is hugely artificial. Our mindset went from living in mystery to needing a scientific proof. If we look at history, she explains, we can see that there was a big shift around the time of Socrates when we look to demystify the world around us through frameworks of rhetoric and reason. We abandoned the old to embrace the new, but it's interesting to see how many people are becoming more curious about things that still remain a mystery. For many great leaders, part of their personal power comes from challenging that divide of the rational and the spiritual, and it's really all about being equally comfortable with things that we know and things that we don't. And Ellen says that some of the greatest leaders are those who master both sides, the spiritual and the rational. Paraphrasing Albert Einstein, she says, the intellect is a faithful servant and intuition is the master. So she says, it took me a long while after leaving Apple to understand the power of integrating the intuitive and rational forces. But Steve, she says, was a master of bringing those two forces together, the technology and the experience. So think about the simplicity of Zen Buddhism and how those spiritual values were translated into simple yet rewarding experiences of interaction with technology. So perhaps more people, she says, are opening up to the unknown because it is at an intuitive level, we know that disambiguation is not the richest path to the human experience. Ambiguity brings joy, wonder, and awe to the experience of being human. She says, there's a beautiful quote from a researcher, a neuroscientist, saying that evolution favored food and not truth. And this reminds me of a TED talk by Ethan Hawke when he talks about the beauty of poetry and how maybe on a day-to-day basis, poetry will not do much to us until maybe we have to grieve someone or something really happens and suddenly poetry feels essential. So our brain has a bias towards those things that are useful rather than useless. So I asked her, hey, what do you think we can talk about spirituality and these type of things in a corporate context? I've been thinking at the time I was working at Google, I had come in a experience of burnout, and I noticed that sometimes with certain people we spoke about spirituality, so we tried to organize maybe, I don't know, add a short meditation practice before a workshop, but we kind of like had to whisper it or be like, hey, is this okay? So even some people using the word mental training or attention training instead of mindfulness, even the word mindfulness has become like a dirty word. Ellen replies, the fundamental problem is that spirit cannot be proven. Many scientists are looking at the neural correlates in the neocortex. We have researchers, cultural icons coming up with frameworks and suggestions that the human reality might be a simulation. There's a huge lexicon from world religions around the ages that humans have looked to the supernatural force to give context to things that we call life. And the truth is that we don't know, but her suggestion, it is that to say, she says, my short advice to anyone who is on a spiritual journey and wants to bring that to the workplace is be very comfortable and confident about saying, I don't know, and I'm okay with that. She mentioned that we have a tendency to use evidence as a chart to prove ourselves right. It's not that we should dismiss evidence or data, but it's also okay to embrace magic, curiosity, and all those things that enrich life. So there's something positive about living in mystery, living in uncertainty that drives, scientific research, artistic pursuits. It's like I need to know and find out, and until we get to know, there's a richness of discovery. Science, she says, it's a process like everything else in the human experience, and it evolves. So she talks about how some scientific data, things that we call truth now, might be replaced by new data, new information as we evolve, and we've seen this over and over. The Earth used to be flat, then it became round. We used to think that people were left brain or right brain, and they were this separate, and now apparently there's a lot more interactions in the hemisphere, and things turn out to be very different from what we once thought. Now science is showing that there's the Upanishads were right, that you make this idea of we make a dent in the universe, and turns out to be quite physically accurate. And we kind of wrap the conversation there. I think we got to that point where basically the conclusion is, yeah, there's a pattern, there's a trend of more people embracing the spirituality, more entrepreneurs, more people that work out there in the world doing business, more and more people are embracing spirituality, that it's perfectly okay to bring that to corporate, just to feel comfortable with the unknown as much as comfortable as we might be having a piece of data that proves us right. I think that's a nice balanced view. Personally speaking, it's hard for me to remain kind of like this neutral, oh, I'm okay not knowing, especially when experiences like plant medicine of different and rituals of many kinds can really open the door and make you see these things in a much more powerfully tangible way. And I guess that's the reason why a lot of people that have been, say, to the other side are vocal and show up to these screens and sharing the wisdom that they have received, hopefully to empower humanity, or at least other humans, to adopt certain ways of thinking, certain behaviors that will enrich not just our lives, but those of those around us. And all right, so that's it. I hope you enjoyed. If you want to see the full article, I'll leave the links below. And until next time.